We think that a good citizen is one who think about the environment and does something for the
Community.
yeah, the community, and goes to school and works, and yeah.
Is a difference between good citizen and a good person?
Yes, there's definitely
Yeah.
a difference between a good citizen and a good person. You have to separate those two things because it's like a professional thing and then it's like more personal thing. So yes. Yep.
Thank you.
And we think that we can be more accommodating to other people.
Yes, we are quite. We have a strong bond with those people who live here, and yeah, we can have a hard time to be accommodating to other people. So
Yeah.
yeah,
In these times when the media has such a big role, if something blows up on the internet, that would of course affect the people who work in EU and so forth. But well, obviously they are representing the people in some way or another. The question is just how well they are doing that.
I mean, everyone's looking for a job, so if they can find one here, that's great. Honestly, there are almost always jobs in the Faroes, or there aren't very many immigrants that come, but those that come, they always get jobs. I mean, there's room enough here. Well, currently everyone's learning English. I mean, that's what we're talking right now. It used to be French, but I don't know, English is easier. Yeah, it's something everyone's already learned how to speak, so.
Well, I think life here is a bit quieter and it's a bit more slow than in like big cities because there's typically a lot of like noise and everyone's going somewhere. But well, we have like all or most of the like modern necessities that a big city has, but still there are differences because there aren't a lot of people here and everything is just like in a smaller scale.
I would prefer a European passport. It's easier for us that way. Yeah. I don't want to be part of the European Union.
Why?
Well, it's mainly because of the fishing industry. If we're subject to EU regulations, I think it will be not very good for us. Well, I think nowadays I mostly think Brexit. Of course, everybody does. Yeah. A good citizen but a bad person, or what would be a good person but a bad citizen? Well, yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah. In Europe?
Yeah.
Well, he abides with the law and works hard, I think, like they do in all countries.
Is it difference between good citizen and good person?
Well, basically, well, partly it's the same, isn't it? A good person abides with the laws of the country, or of the union that he is part of. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, in Europe, I think it's better to live in big groups, like in a union. Surely for many reasons, as I mentioned earlier, the peacekeeping quality of that environment. So in that sense, it's good to be lots of people agreeing on rules.
How do you think, is it better to live in small group people than in big?
I think so, yes, but there are pros and cons because it can be good because you know each other and hvordan ser man samband? Hvordan ser man liksom samband? Det liksom sammenholdet. Yeah, the relationship is very good, but it can also
it's not always good, because if something happens, then everybody know about it. No matter in the Faroe Islands, if it happens in another village or another island, then we know about the person, and somebody is family with it. And it goes just everybody knows about it very fast. But on the other hand, it's very nice too. You can just go outside and then you know people all the time. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, so it's make like somehow like frame around like you need to behave like that, because like you know that you can meet these people again and again. It's not like in big city where there's a lot of people and you know
Yeah.
you never met them again,
Yeah.
and you don't care about others.
Yeah, so here
You are more close here, yeah.
yeah, you are more you don't do things just okay, I don't care because I'm never gonna see them again. Here's like, okay, I'm gonna see them again. Maybe not right now, but I will. So yeah.
We're associated with Denmark, as in we are part of the Denmark Kingdom, but we or Danish Kingdom, but we are not part of the European Union because it disrupts our economy. If we are part of European Union, we don't get to fish a lot of fish, and that's what our economy is based on. So I think it's kind of awkward, but we're part of this. We're associated with the Danish Kingdom, but not with European Union.
Mm-hmm. You have whaling here, and Europe, it's they don't allow it to whaling. So is it reason to not to be in European Union?
No, not exactly. As I already said before, the other part that or the other reason that we're not part of the European Union is because we fish a lot, and I'm also taking whaling in account, but of course, whaling doesn't support all of our economy. It doesn't support anything in our economy, because we don't sell it. It's not economical. It's not a part of the economy. So, but fishing is, the main reason why. What was the question again?
Yeah. What's like is it the reason whaling is it the reason to not to be in European Union?
Oh, yeah.
Because Europe they are protect nature, and like they don't allow to do that.
Yeah, no, it's not, because the fishing takes the whole part
Yeah.
of that.
Do you have problem when people from other country working in your country?
Well, it's a bit of 50-50 right there, because I mean, now we have right now we have not so many unemployed people, and because of that we need more workers. So that has the effect of these companies gathering workers from other countries, right? And I can't really say anything against that. Like, that's a reason to it. So.
Yeah, what percent of Europe should be refugees? How many Europe should take in?
Well, I mean, we are a small country, not a lot of people. So, I mean, if we take any large percentage of people into the country, it will influence our culture, our language. It will, it has such a big effect on us. I would say that we should rather take a small percentage in, as it could ruin our culture and whatever.
Yeah, can Europe be influenced by people?
Yeah, I mean, everyone gets influenced by people, and as I said, we are a small country, so it's easier for us to get influenced by other people than other people to be affected by us.
Is it better to live in a small group of people than in big?
I figure that it's easier to live in a small group because I mean you take a look at the Faroe Islands. It's everybody knows each other. It's very hard to get off any criminal end. So it's I would say I like it better in a small group.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Personally, I don't think that Faroe Islands should join the EU because of the EU's fishing laws. It would allow ships from outside of the Faroe Islands to fish in the Faroe Islands, and the thing is about the Faroe Islands is that our economy is solely based on fishing. As such, it wouldn't be so smart economically for Faroe Islands to join the EU. Even if I may agree with the policies of the EU, I'm here thinking more in an economical benefit for the Faroe Islands. I also think that the EU has some what's called neoliberal financial policies, which would restrict the Faroe Islands' sovereignty over our country, and especially the euro is controlled very much by the European Central Bank, where the neoliberal politics has been dominated from the very beginning.
Yeah, and how do you think what Europe can solve better than one country alone cannot?
What?
What European Union can solve better than a one country cannot?
I think that, of course, I like the Schengen agreement that you can travel in every European country, and also that there's a bigger trade between the countries. That's of course good for the economies of Europe.
Thank you.
I would personally think that you should pay taxes to your nation, so that your politicians can allocate where the money goes, and that the country instead of the person should pay tax to the European Union, such that it can and it can be done in a bigger scale. So, and in that way, it might be a we don't feel it as much. We don't feel like we are being double taxed or triple taxed in the case of also paying tax to the municipality. So in that way, it might be more fair. I think that that's a hard question, because there again you I come to think about if the Europeans should play a role in the global sphere, because it's our goal with Europe to make a United States of Europe. So I don't actually really know what I should answer.
And which role European Union play in like international conflict in the world?
Yeah, because I'm personally of the opinion that we should always that we should solve conflicts with diplomacy instead of armies, and thusly a European army would maybe seem very aggressive and maybe in some way take sovereignty away from the countries to opt out or opt in wars, like for example the Iraq war, where Denmark chose to join, which we the Faroe Islands didn't agree with, but If we have a European army, then it's all in or all out. So
I think it's easier when you have a European passport. It's easier to travel. So I probably go with a European.
Yeah, okay. What does a good citizen do?
In general, what a good citizen does.
Yeah.
Well, of course, be good to your neighbor and try and help out and do whatever duties we have. I mean, we have work, or we have not try and get, but also try and give back to the community in whatever way you can.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about a community which in some ways can be very good, standing together and support each other. But at the same time, it also takes away some of the freedom of the individual countries to take their own decisions about various issues in their own country and between the borders of the countries. Trades and I don't know exactly what it could be, but it helps, it's good, but it is also something that kind of locks people and kind of pushes a certain country to make a certain decision, which they probably would have done differently if they were not in the EU, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much what I think. It's something, it's good in ways to stay together, and at the same time I think in some cases the EU should be better to let countries rule their own thing. Listen to each other. I think, well, EU is just politics basically. So it's the people who have the most influence who are gonna set the day. At the end of the day, they're gonna make push their plans through. If that makes sense. Listen to each other, listen to each other's needs. There are cultural differences in the EU. There are major cultural differences, and there are differences in how we want to do certain things. Not everything has to be controlled by a umbrella like the EU. So I think listen to each other and let each other speak. That is, of course, is a lot more difficult to actually practice than to just suggest. But I think that could be better, especially nowadays, because social media gives the average citizen, you and me, the chance to speak up. We can gather people to back up whatever agenda we have. So I think definitely it's a lot easier now than it was years back, I think. But of course, EU is again a lot of different cultures, a lot of different governments coming together, and so it takes a lot. But yeah, I think definitely it can change. I think definitely I prefer small. Of course, the Faroe Islands is a very small place with 50,000 citizens. So. Which would be a very small city or town even in most of the other countries in whatever. But I think when we are a small community, we interact in a whole different level. If you just scale up a little bit, people start just living in their own little bubble and not really interacting in the same way. So I definitely think people are better helping each other in smaller communities. Yeah.
If we sort of drop the idea of being a Faroese people in the North Atlantic and instead admit that we are Danish and we are part of the Danish state, then like that we're part of the EU. But because we claim to be or are a people in the North Atlantic, Faroese, not Danes, then we are not part of the EU. Even though we have Danish passports. So there are two ways for us to enter EU. It's either as an individual state, which is unlikely, or via Denmark.
And because we have a strong political wing here that wants liberation, total liberation from Denmark, that would be the more likely way to go. But not right now, because the voters in the Faroes are not really supporting the Independence Party right now, even though the economy is booming. Go back 20, 30 years and you can actually follow the voters. The better the economy, the more independent the voters become. The weaker the economy, the more we are dependent on Denmark, and the more the dependent part, the unionists receive all the votes. But questions regarding EU, it's not really discussed that much in the Faroes, not whether or not we should be in or out of the EU, but it's most of the time we discuss market access. Should we sell to EU because the transportation time and cost is lower than selling to Russia or China or Canada? So that the question is market access, not being in or out.
Hi friends, now I'm sitting with...
Peter Simonsen.
Yeah, and you are from?
I'm from Faroe Islands, from a small village called Kvívík.
Yes, so what do you think of when you think of European Union?
I think it's a organization of many nations, or it's coming more and more it's making Europe becoming one country, you can say. It's with many states. It's looking, I guess I would say it looks a lot like the American states. Like it's one parliament with the states under it.
Yeah, should be the European army?
I think so. I don't know really, because it doesn't really matter for me if they do or not. But yeah, sure, if we have common rules and common justice laws and all that, I think, yeah, sure, also a common army.
Do you have a problem when people from other countries working in your country?
No, not really. We get a few workers around here. I think it's fine actually, because it's often it's work that many people here don't do. So I think it's good to have people from elsewhere to do it.
Yeah, what most of the people doing here?
We have it's a wharf down at the bay where they build ships and such. And there are many from Poland who work there as well. And they're also at the fisheries where they actually prepare fish to be iced down and all that. There are also a lot of women from different places working there. I think it's good actually. It's making our economy better.
What Europe can do better?
What
Europe can do better?
What the Europe can do better? I don't know really. I don't know.
Yeah, and which problem Europe can solve better than a one country?
I think peace actually. So peace between nations and ensuring peace. Europe was built on making sure there's never war again in Europe between countries, and that has the EU done much better than separate states, separate nationals. So,
yeah, and what Europe should do for should Europe more care about climate change and about environment?
Yeah, I think they should, but also I think I don't know really what standards EU are on now, but I think if we could and if we can, we should do more about climate changing. Yeah, definitely.
And which steps we should do first? What we should do first?
I think
against climate change.
I think it's most important that we make our fossil fuels go away, so we have more natural energy, more windmills if we can, more solar cells, and upgrade our technology in those areas. And after that, then we should definitely try to ban all one-use plastics because they are so damaging for our environment.
And what is alternative for plastic?
Yeah, we could go back more to paper bags. They're also damaging to nature, but I think they digest easier, so that they don't stay in nature for as long as plastic. But try to buy something more of cloth, so when you go out buying something, you use your bag, also the same bag over and over, and maybe instead of plastic, then because when we buy something, it's always wrapped in plastic, the product itself. I don't know. We have to try to make something new instead of plastic, but I don't know what that should be.
Yeah, I know that you searching now for oil in your island.
Yeah, we are.
And how do you think is it will be a problem in the future if you found?
Yeah.
Because you also have goal to be like a green energy till 2030.
It's a subject many are discussing right now, because many think that we shouldn't find oil. If you find oil, then just leave it, because if we find oil, that means that we are making the climate change worse. So yeah, so I think that we shouldn't find oil at all, and that we just should focus on lasting energy, like yeah, windmills and what are they called? Yeah, windmills and solar cells and all that.
Yeah.